for the evening. So shalom and namaste, good evening to everyone in this ongoing series that we have started in the memory of General Jacob, who is not only an iconic figure but symbolizes the bond between India and Israel like no one else. So our Indo Isreal study group, which was established about 18 months ago, is working with a singular objective of deepening and deepening the ties between Israelis and Indians and not restricting itself to any field. We want people who are into social work and NGOs to interact with each other, students to interact with each other, academics and scholars from both countries to interact with each other, so on and so forth. Right now, this evening, we have organized this particular webinar in the remembrance of General J.F.R. Jacob personally. And I would now like to invite Shekhar Dutt-ji to make his opening remarks. Before that, let me introduce Shri Shekhar Dutt to all of you. Shri Shekhar Dutt was a captain in the Indian Army, and he saw action in the 1971 war, which is popularly known as the War of the Liberation of Bangladesh. And he saw action in the Western Front during that war. After that, he joined the civil service and he retired as the Defense Secretary, which is the senior-most position in history. Following that, he was also the governor of Chhattisgarh for a while. And it gives me great pleasure to inform you that during his tenure in the Ministry of Defense and in the civil service, Shekharji had a very good opportunity to interact with several officials from Israel, and the relationships that he developed during his tenure over there have endured even now and have sort of become lifelong friendships. So over to you, Shekharji, to make your opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Ashish ji, and all good evening, all friends, both from India and from Israel. And I don't know whether there are other people who are friends of both the countries in other countries or who are in this group. I'm sure there would be. So good evening to everybody. I am extremely happy that the Indo Isreal study group has chosen this topic because General J.F.R. Jacob was an icon not only in India but also in Israel, and that when I used to go to Israel and I found in the War Museum of Israel there's a place kept for General Jacob, and I have a photograph with General Jacob's photograph in the War Museum of Israel. So that's how it is. General Jacob was a soldier. He was from the same regiment as I am, and that is I'm wearing the tie of that regiment. And
Shekhar, just a minute. May I request everyone to turn their mics off, please? Let Shekharji be the only one who will speak to us. Thank you. Yes, Shekharji, please continue.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ashiji. So I was saying that General Jacob was a hero at Israel as well because he fought 1945, 44, and the Second World War. And during that period in 1950s, he saw action at Iraq and the areas which are near to the present-day Israel. And he was one of the persons who took an exceptional action to save a large number of the Israel people. Now, he is also a great friend of many of my Israeli colleagues, and that also I came to know later. So it was something very, very interesting that General Jacob on one side was revered here in India. At the same time, he was well known in Israel. General Jacob had extremely good leadership qualities. So he was an icon in war and after the war. But in war also, he was one of the few people who could establish communication, and he told, it was he who told the Pakistanis that there is no fun going to be, you will be only dead now. And the Pakistanis, with a very large force and very large numbers of equipment, and they saw the futility that the Indian forces had surrounded them in 1971, and they decided to surrender. So 93,000 prisoners, and 93,000 prisoners mean that there were more than 4 or 5 division of forces with everything. And but they saw that they would be ultimately losing a large number of soldiers and every bit of equipment. They can't escape. And it was General Jacob who told them that it is futile to fight any longer with the Indians. That's how in 12 days, 12 days, we entered Pakistan on the 4th, 5th night, 4th, 5th of December 1971. And by 16th of December, the war was over and a new country was created. So this is a history by itself. And General Jacob played a very, very good part in it. Later, he became governor of Goa and governor of our border state, which has contributed very large numbers of soldiers to India. And he was popular at both the places. So he was a soldier, he was a general, he was a leader, and then he went into higher echelons of decision making, guiding all of us in India. The enormous amount of sagacity which General Jacob has shown has been reflected in his ability to handle a large number of different kind of situations. And I am very happy that Brigadier Apte is here because he has been in the training establishment. General Jacob has been a model on which training can be given. Training as to how a soldier can lead, how a soldier can make others, young officers, feel that they have the leadership ability, they have the ability to take decisions, and they have the ability to take the army, their unit forward, they have the ability to take the country forward. General Jacob's enormous ability to influence the mind of other officers, especially the junior officers, is fantastic. And in fact, this is a quality which has everybody who has served him. Otherwise, out of the blue, he was picked up to become the governor of Goa and then the governor of Punjab. Also shown a massive ability to work according to his principles. So, at the time when many people who belong to the Jewish faith had decided to go into Israel, he said, "No, I will remain in India, but I'll be a friend to Israel." And he didn't. He didn't go out of India. Although I am told by many of my Israeli friends that they would have been very happy if he had gone to Israel. He was a unique person. He was an Indian at heart and Indian first in his entire. He also another person with his rapport with the other senior officers. So in whatever formations he was there, he was one of the persons who would take everybody together, and he would be the person who will actually or his writ would run actually. So my to many of my younger colleagues has been that please learn from General Jacob. He's an ideal officer who has been in the Indian Army, and not only in the Indian Army but elsewhere. And our generation has learnt a lot. The future generations will also. I came very close with him when he was living in Delhi, and many times. And some of my dearest friends, like Yossi Ben Hanan, General Yossi Ben Hanan of Israel, General Amos Aaron of Israel, whenever they came to India, they did visit General Jacob and picked up the thread with him. I thank Mr. Ashish Kulkarni and all his colleagues in this study group, and I wish all the very best to everybody. At one point, we can sum up that Indo Isreal friendship is a very strong friendship, and Indo Isreal study group will have enormous areas to see how this friendship can grow in different fields. Thank you very much. Jai Hind. Shalom. Ashish ji, your mic is open.
Ashish, you are muted. Ashish.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Shekharji. I would now like to invite General Gershon Hacohen to share his thoughts on the contribution of General Jacob to the Indo-Israel relations. General Hacohen was the Northern Corps commander and the head of the Israeli National Defense College, and presently he is a senior advisor to the Israeli Defense Forces. Over to you, General Hacohen.
Okay, namaste, good evening. Thank you for the invitation. A great honor for me. Actually, I got the chance to meet personally twice General Jacob. I got his book, I've read it, and in all the meetings, he succeeded to really bring an expression of a very, very unique general as it was just now described. Of course, he succeeded to bring honorable victory to India, and I'll try to emphasize my point about what it means to be an excellent general and a Jew in a state in which you are absolutely loyal to it, as was General Jacob. Of course, he was absolutely proud Indian citizen. It was that realization that India is his homeland. Also, he was proud Jew and proud military officer. With all that, he was very, very modest person. And about that, I want to clarify, to explain that this is the specific exemplification of what is in my mind is to be a successful Jewish general. Not everyone is like that. General Jacob was someone that could really exemplify what it means. If we are speaking about a Jewish general, it is something strange, because if we will just go to something very familiar, we have basketball players that are Jew, football players that are Jewish. We cannot say that the way they are playing is Jewish. They are playing basketball or football, doesn't matter what, it is basketball or football. But in generalship, in the very definition, in the very nature of warfare, by understanding that every phenomenon of war is unique, it means that we must bring a unique operational idea, a unique leadership, and here we can really speak about the uniqueness of the general regarding the uniqueness of the warfare. First of all, we must speak about his unique leadership. And it is example for Israeli IDF forces and for Indian forces. And that is a great lesson to me as well. First of all, what it means loyalty. We are well aware about American Jewish people that are really in anxiety from the tension between loyalty to their homeland as Americans and also loyalty to the Jewish state Israel, and they are calling that the problem of double loyalty. And they are afraid from not bringing a clear statement that in the priorities they are first of all loyal to United States in America. With General Jacob, I didn't know him as a young officer, but what I learned from him, what I've learned from the way the other looked upon him, he was never in that problem. It was very, very natural to him to be absolutely Indian, to be absolutely Jewish, without not at all in that anxiety, what is the priority? Of course, it is due to the Indian culture, and I'll not go to speak about Indian culture. That's, of course, very, very important issue, not to me to speak about it. I want to concentrate about General Jacob. So the way he succeeded to lead forces in Indian army, it was due to the fact that everyone trusted him, that he is absolutely loyal to India. And he was like that as a governor and as a just old man in India that's telling his very, very impressive story. Beyond that, he was modest. It is not at all a feature that we can recognize with generals. Sometimes they are making so many noise, they're so proud about themselves. Take, for example, very known generals as MacArthur, Patton. General Jacob, from the beginning, was modest. And what is Jewish by that? The rabbis 2,000 years ago said that real modesty could be manifested only by someone who is rich, clever, and hero. It means that if he is not one of them, he is not at all a temptation and not to be a modest. But if he is hero and clever, etc., and he is still keeping himself in modesty, this is something we must look upon it with great respect. Beyond that, he came to his job with faith and trust. And about that, I must explain something. There was a great rabbi, Jewish in New York, a Lubavitcher rabbi, that was giving everyone $1 as a gift when he left him. Every one of his disciples was getting from him $1. And he explained that he is giving $1 because in the dollar it is written, "In God we trust." And if it would have been written, "In God we believe," he would not give the $1. There is great difference between trust and belief. Belief is a question for theological seminar. It is not in decision-making process. Trust is something coming to be expressed in life, in practical affair, in practical reasoning. And the combination of faith and trust is Jewish. And the way he brought this trust not only in God, trust that he can create something that will make the impossible to be possible. Trust that he can do something to lead the people, and someone that could get the trust of the people upon him. This is something that for me exemplifying Jewish leadership. In the Bible we can find people like that. The first Jew in the history, Abraham, I'll speak about him later, he was like that. And when he succeeded, Abraham, the first Jew, to get a victory upon superpowers, 4 kings that came in alliances to fight in the land of Israel, and he succeeded to get a very, very enormous victory against them, he said that he will get nothing to himself from that victory. And we can really create a connection between that great example in the Bible and to General Jacob. Beyond that, with all the modesty, he always was full with creativity and with a kind of smile that beyond it, you can find a mind that always thinking with creativity, with another idea. Everyone today preaching students, preaching those who are cadets in a National Defense College to think outside the box. General Jacob was a combination of one expert that knowing absolutely the box, familiar with the box, therefore he could succeed to go away beyond the box, to think beyond the box due to the fact that he was well familiar with the box itself. This is a great example of someone who understanding that warfare is first of all a human being phenomena. It is cultural phenomena. It is not only the way to bring to action the artillery, all the weapons. It is first of all and after all a human being phenomena. We must understand the rationale behind the war. We must understand the people coming to fight in that war, and the achievement of that war must be translated to strategic purposes that taking seriously the human beings that are living with the outcomes of the war. Of course, he can really teach us a lot about that. What also is very, very clear in the Bible, and General Jacob could give us example of how to use these ideas in active life of military general today. The main lesson we can learn in the Bible is that victory is not promised to the brave, not really promised to those who are considered to be the stronger. The stronger could really lose the war. And those who are absolutely brave can do something very brave and to come to find it absolutely stupid. To understand that, it means that we must come with looking forward to something beyond just a manifestation of power and brevity. It is something else. Why I think General Jacob succeeded to create that beautiful synthesis between being a Jew, being an Indian and absolutely loyal Indian citizen, and to create very, very strong connection to friends in Israel as a Jew, not just as a friend of Israel, but as a Jew that aware that people in Israel and him sharing something together. Why he succeeded to do that? My explanation about that occasion and about all the Israeli-Indian relationship, including the way in which young Israelis finding a deep connection in India. My explanation going as well to the rabbis that told us 2,000 years ago about a legend. It is written in the Bible that Abraham, beyond his son Yitzchak, he had after 6 sons, and he sent them to the east, and he gave them gifts. And the rabbi is telling us that the gifts he gave them are his secrets. Doesn't matter what really was that secret, whether it is true or not, it is a myth. But this myth coming to explain something that already those rabbis 2,000 years ago realized that there is a common denominator, something that we are sharing together in the depths of spiritual attitude to life. And by asking why it is like that, they said that is because there is something that we shared generations before from the gifts of Abraham, that he sent his children, 6 sons, to the east with all his secrets. I think that the way in which General Jacob, in very, very simple way, without great declarations, succeeded to just behave in that way, to be altogether Indian general, someone that considered to be a warfare hero, brought a victory, and creating that trust between Israeli military officers and Indian military officers. This is a great example that not only could be explained by the personality of General Jacob, it is something that creating a manifestation of something much more deep in the background of the Jewish culture and Indian culture. Thank you.
Thank you very much, General Hacohen, and explaining so beautifully the strong religious and philosophical underpinning of General Jacob's personality. Thank you very much indeed. We would now like to move on to the main speaker today, Brigadier Ajit Apte, who will speak to us on the life and legacy of General Jacob I would like to introduce Brigadier Apte first to all of you. Brigadier Ajit Apte is an alumnus of the National Defence Academy, Pune. He was commissioned in the Regiment of the Artillery in December 1970. He is a second generation army officer. He fought in the 1971 war on the Eastern Front and also on the Western Front. He also served on the line of control in the Jammu and Kashmir and in the Eastern sector in counter-insurgency environment. He commanded a field regiment in the run of Kutch on the Western Front and an artillery brigade of the Strike Force front during the Kargil War in 1999. He was an instructor, senior instructor, and then the Brigadier General Staff at the School of Artillery in Devlali in 3 different tenures. He has also been instructor at the Officers Training Academy in Madras, which is now Chennai, from December 79 to April 1982. He retired from the army after 35 years of service in December 2005. He is a fellow research scholar from the Department of Defense and Strategic Studies of the University of Pune and is a member of the Center of Advanced Strategic Studies, Pune. He was a former chairman of the British Business Group Pune chapter, and he is also a member of the India Advisory Council of Steinbach and Partner. With these words, I would like Brigadier Apte to kindly take over and make his presentation on the life and legacy of General J.F.R. Jacob. Brigadier Apte, over to you, please.
Thank you, Dr. Ashish. Mr. Shekhar Dutt, sir, distinguished generals from Israel, ladies and gentlemen. I am indeed honored to have been invited to speak about Lieutenant General J.F.R. Jacob, PVSM, who, as you all know, was an iconic military officer and gentleman of great caliber. I had a great association with General Jacob right from my childhood days. But I would like to tell you that my father and General Jacob were coursemates from the Royal Indian Artillery. My father and General Jacob were commissioned in 1942 into the 1st Anti-Tank Regiment, which was then in Iraq. My father was Indian Commission 469, that's the Indian Commission Army number, and General Jacob was Indian Commission Army number 470. That's one number next to my father. My father and General Jacob fought in the Second World War together in the Burma campaign. Then they went on to Medan, Sumatra, Java, and they were the first Indian officers in the unpartitioned India to be selected to do the gunnery staff course at the School of Artillery, Lark Hill, and then return as the first Indian batch of Indian gunnery instructors at the School of Artillery before India was partitioned. So we've had a long association with the general, that's my father. They had parallel careers right up to command of a brigade. And therefore, General Jacob, whenever I met him, used to always recount the stories of mine with him when I was a child. Therefore, indeed, sir, it's my honor, ladies and gentlemen. I will just touch upon briefly on General Jacob's initial background, but as Mr. Shekhar Dutt has already mentioned, and so also General from Israel, I think General Jacob's moment of glory or his hour of triumph was the 1971 India-Pakistan War, the War of Liberation in which Bangladesh was made. I've had the great honor of being a second lieutenant, as Mr. Shekhar Dutt mentioned. He was on the Western Front, if I'm not wrong, in the Battle of Parbat Ali, where he was decorated for gallantry. And I've seen Mr. Shekhar Dutt, I've met him when he spoke so very well and he presented the memorabilia which he had picked up in Pakistan. and honorably gave it to his alma mater, the Officers Training Academy. I was on the Eastern Front, a second lieutenant. Later, I also served under General Jacob when I was a captain adjutant, and General Jacob was the army commander. So that was the equation. On that note, Ashish, I would like to share a few pictures and slides. So I will just come to that, and I hope I'm able to do it.
Yeah, you should.
Yes, I should. I've
No
done a
problem.
lot of practice for it.
Yes.
Okay. Has it come? No.
We can see your screen. You please hide that. Where it says stop sharing, you just hide that.
Okay.
And I think you have to go to your presentation.
Yeah.
That's right, and put on the slideshow. Put it on slideshow. It should
Okay.
work.
So now
Excellent.
are you able to see my presentation?
Yes, we are. We are able to see you and the presentation. No problem. Please continue.
Yes.
Very good. So now I will touch upon the life and legacy of General Jacob very briefly. He was born in Calcutta in May 1923, went to Victoria School, did his senior Cambridge, was a topper. There is a slight dichotomy in General Jacob's age. The army records show him born in 1921, whereas actually he was born in May 1923. But there's a reason for it. You see, when the Second World War started and Adolf Hitler had been unleashing his tyranny against the Jews, there were a number of poets who wrote, and General Jacob was impressed by them, and much against his parents' wishes, decided to join the Indian Army. He therefore, being underage, had to increase his age by 2 years and become eligible. He was an outstanding cadet from the Officers Training School, Mao. He joined the Royal Indian Artillery, 1st Anti-Tank Regiment, which I mentioned, fought in Iraq, Burma, Sumatra, Java, Medan, did the gunnery staff course at the Lark Hill, UK. He subsequently rose in rank and file, commanded a regiment, a brigade, but his hallmark was the command of 12th Infantry Division, which he raised on India's Western Front. He then became the Chief of Staff. Eastern Command played a major role in the 1971 war, then commanded and raised a corps, that is 16 Corps at Nagrota. Therefore, he has the distinction of raising 3 Field Regiment on 14 May 1956. He then raised 12th Infantry Division. Then he raised 16 Corps after successfully completing his tenure as the Chief of Staff, Eastern Command, and the 1971 war victory. And finally, this young lad who was born in Calcutta had the distinction of commanding the Eastern Command and becoming the Army Commander. General Jacob was acerbic but well-meaning. He could stand no nonsense. He wouldn't brook any interference in his command. His loyalty was absolute and compelling. He had a penchant for the maneuver battle, and he was known as our Moshe Dayan. In fact, many of the tactics and strategies which he doctrined on the Western Front and subsequently even on the Eastern Front were based on some of the Israeli generals, what they would put in 1967 in the Six-Day War, which we all know about, and subsequently, of course, in the 73 Yom Kippur War. General Jacob was far ahead of his times, intelligent, sharp, he had the breadth of vision, impeccable professional and moral integrity. I have personally experienced it, and so has my father. He had an equilibrium of mind to function effectively in an environment of uncertainty and ambiguity, which will get exhibited subsequently. To focus on General Jacob's hour of triumph, as I call it, was the Eastern Front overall offensive of Operation Cactus Lily. I will not take more than a minute on this, but this is just to give an overview to the viewers. The Indian offensive on the Eastern Front was planned as a four-pronged offensive. On the west, if you see, the western prong, that was from the Calcutta, Barrackpur, Kanchrapara area. He had advocated the raising of two corps, which was a new corps. It was raised on 6th October 1971. My division, that is 9 Infantry Division and 4 Infantry Division, were part of this newly raised corps, commanded by Lieutenant General T.N. Raina, who subsequently became the Army Chief. The northwestern prong was the 20 Mountain Division, which came in and fought the Battle of Hilli. On the northeastern prong, we had another force coming in, the 101st Communication Zone. We also had the airborne assault at Tangail, which was again part of Jacob's idea, along with the 4 Corps commander. And southeast, if you see the prong, it was 4 Corps under General Sagat Singh, which had 8 Mountain Division, 23 Mountain Division, 57 Mountain Division, and they also did the leap across Meghna. So this, in a nutshell, was the overall plan, which was conceived by General Jacob. He gave a nice briefing to the Army Commander, General Arora, and subsequently it was approved by then General, later Field Marshal Sam Manekshaw. When I was a second lieutenant, I joined my regiment in Tezpur. It was pushed down towards Calcutta, Barrackpur, Kanchrapara, and as many of the defense officers who are attending this seminar, and Mr. Shekhar Dutt would also know, subalterns were in our times only to be seen and not to be heard. But subalterns were also given a lot of work. I had the great honor of running around to Calcutta and doing a lot of work for the regiment which was coming down from Tezpur, and we were getting deployed in August, September on the Eastern Front. I had the opportunity when I visited Fort William, Calcutta, as a subaltern, just to have a glimpse of General Jacob in Fort William. I saluted him. He had no time to look at others. He was very busy. But why was he busy? He was busy because he was in the vanguard for conceptualization of war, its strategy, staging forward, all combat elements, building logistics, infrastructure, strategic reserves. He had a lot of things on his mind. And he put into use the expanding torrent by Captain B.H. Littleheart into this offensive, which would follow up subsequently. Jacob played a pivotal role advising the Army Commander and the Army Chief for missions and objectives in East Pakistan and shaping the battlefield since March 1971. The Jessore-Khurna sector, the Hilli battles operations, jackpot, which was done till 30th November. And I was there in that because my regiment was deployed. I opened fire on enemy targets on 28th September. I had a glimpse of General Jacob again when he came with the Army Commander to visit the frontline troops sometime in November. And frankly, let me tell you, as a second lieutenant, we did not know what was happening. His great contribution as Chief of Staff, Eastern Army, in establishing the harmonious communication was very important. As you would all know, there are always differences of opinions between generals. It's happened during the Second World War also, when General Eisenhower, a 5-star general, was orchestrating the Allied invasion at Normandy with generals like Montgomery, Patton, Bradley, and Theodor, and so many others. There would always be a difference of opinion. So also on the Indian Army's front, on the eastern side, there were differing opinions, but General Jacob was that coordinating point who could make the corps commanders understand what the Army commander required. and he got them to remain focused on a single agenda despite differences. So that was one of the hallmarks of Jacob's personality. As I mentioned to you, the army commander's directions had to be conveyed. He bridged the gap, and he also had a very good rapport with Major General Inder Gill, who had just been chosen by Field Marshal Manekshaw as the Director General or the Director of Military Operations. Jacob, because of his personality, ensured that he could persuade the Director of Military Operations to give him what he wanted on the Eastern Front, because the punch had to be delivered there. Because of his good rapport, the Air Force, Navy, and civilian organizations also fell in place. I'd like to mention here that the Eastern Air Command that time required certain squadrons with which Jacob and the Chief of Air Staff, that is Air Marshal E.C. Lal, they could get the Central Air Command to shift its squadrons and thus enable the Eastern Army to function with one entity on the Eastern Front rather than dealing with two, that is the Eastern and the Central Army. I think that credit must go to General Jacob. He orchestrated the battle, enabling commanders to thrust deep, strike hard. And I've experienced it in battle on the Eastern Front. The goalposts kept changing. But Jacob had that uncanny quality in him in which he would devise mobile offensive action with flexibility and exploit fleeting opportunities. Therefore, the objectives and missions changed. In fact, it is on record that Pakistan's National Defense College had written, "Credit of victory goes to General Jacob's meticulous planning and preparations." I had seen that myself, so I am witness to what was unraveling in that drama which Mr. Shekhar Dutt mentioned took place in those 14 days when the Indian Army raced into Dhaka and into Khulna. And in that doing so, I want to show you a few pictures what Jacob with the corps commanders, with the Director of Military Operations could convince the higher leaders, the Navy and the Air Force, to fall in place. The special heliborne operations at Sylhet, where an infantry battalion was picked up, the 4th Battalion of the 5th Gurkha Rifles, and made to believe that a brigade was moved, whereas only it was a battalion. The special heliborne operations at Sylhet achieved great success. The airborne assault on Tangail and the capture of Pungli Bridge was another master plan orchestrated by Jacob with one parachute battalion, that's the 2nd Parachute Battalion of the 50 Independent Parachute Brigade. Incidentally, 50 Independent Parachute Brigade was on my front with us in the Jessore Khulna sector, but one parachute battalion was detached with a parachute field artillery battery, and they jumped to achieve the successful Tangail airdrop, which was the largest ever since after World War II, when the 82nd and the 101st US Airborne Divisions dropped near St. Mary Église and into the Normandy invasion site. The orchestration between the Air Force was achieved thanks to General Jacob. Mr. Shekhar Dutt had mentioned that General Jacob played a great role in getting Niazi to surrender. It's a fact. Actually, when General Manekshaw wanted Jacob to go ahead, he went, met Niazi. There's a picture at the bottom left with an American press reporter, and Jacob managed to convince Niazi that it is time to surrender and not cause more casualties to the Pakistani troops. That enabled not only Mujibur Rahman, who had been arrested on 25th March 1971 by General Yahya Khan, when he unleashed a reign of terror or genocide in East Pakistan, calling it Operation Searchlight, first under General Shahzada Yaqub Khan, followed by General Tika Khan, the butcher of Baluchistan, and subsequently, finally, General Niazi. The bottom right, if you see, is that great picture when India won that war decisively and the aims were achieved when Sheikh Mujibur Rahman was released. And here he is with General Jagjit Singh Arora, the Eastern Army Commander, and General Jacob, the Chief of Staff, all looking very happy. I was telling you about how General Jacob got Niazi to surrender. It's a fact. The Indian Army was nowhere near what the strength of the Pakistan Army was at Dhaka. The airborne offensive, orchestrated by General Jacob, ensured that the Pakistan 93 Infantry Brigade could not fall back to protect Dhaka. Also, due to a wrong BBC report, which actually turned out in India's favor, gave out that a whole brigade has jumped, whereas it was only a battalion. And Jacob made Niazi believe that. He gave no ultimatum. Niazi actually wanted an armistice with India to declare unilateral ceasefire so that he could successfully evacuate his troops out from the ports of Khulna, Kangla, and Mangla, so that if at all there was a US 7th Fleet which had sailed into the Bay of Bengal, would help them. But that didn't happen because Jacob insisted there'll be no armistice, it will be a proper surrender. And that is exactly what Mr. Shekhar Dutt had mentioned. 93,000 prisoners, out of which I myself was witness to the surrender at Khulna on 17 December, where nearly a complete brigade plus strength surrendered to us. That surrender at Dhaka led to this very famous photograph, which is, I think, all over the world now. And General Jacob triumphantly standing behind General Niazi with General Jagjit Arora to see that his orchestration of efforts proved successful. Jacob, as I told you, soon after being Chief of Staff, went as Corps Commander to 16 Corps and very soon was nominated to head the Eastern Army, very rightly so. His main achievement was that he created trust with the chief ministers and the governors, architected silent reconciliation, tranquility in the entire Northeast region. I am aware of that because later I served in the Northeast for 3.5 years in the counterinsurgency environment, and we could feel the fruits of General Jacob's efforts. Another great thing which Jacob did was he crafted the far-sighted strategic document for Andaman and Nicobar Archipelago for economic and national security needs. He gave the thought of a tri-service command, which was accepted by the government, and today in India, it is being propagated, what we call as the Theatre Command, which will be a synergy of the Army, Navy, and the Air Force to function under one united control. Let me just tell you one thing, that in 71, we had no mobiles, we had no digitization, we had no automation, we had medieval kind of communication systems, the radio sets, but yet the Indian Armed Forces, the Army, Navy, and the Air Force had that synergy and cohesion in mind. It did not require a formal structure, and that was achieved because General Jacob gave the correct advice, took the correct advice, and formed a good bridge to ensure that even in those times, 50 years ago, we could achieve and understand each other's intentions and motives. He suggested India build a strong military presence west of the Malacca Straits to prevent adversaries seeking naval bases and enlarging their hegemony amongst the Southeast Asian nations. That is coming out very evidently now as we see what is happening in the subcontinent, and especially with India's immediate northern neighbor. As governor, he excelled. He first took over as governor of Goa. He effectively administered during the president's rule, contributed to preservation of Goa's natural green cover. As governor of Punjab, he again was the administrator of Chandigarh, successfully set up the IT park. That's a great achievement by Jacob. He invited Narayan Murthy, chairman of Foces, to set up a development center and motivated others to follow suit. This not only gave a good opportunity, but it increased the employment avenues in the city. We have today amidst us General Jacob's ADC, who is also from my regiment. So actually we are today 3 gunners, Indian Army artillery officers. Mr. Shekhar Dutt, our very respected and honored senior gunner officer, myself, Saminder Moore, but above all, we pay great tribute and a great salute to the senior most gunner, that is Lieutenant General JFR Jacob. So he conceptualized also the Chandigarh War Memorial and got it designed by students of the Chandigarh College, and he got it inaugurated by President Abdul Kalam on 17th August 2006. Jacob thus played a very great role, not only as a military officer, at the junior level, at the senior level, at the top level in strategic planning, but also as a corps commander, an army commander, and as a governor. Just a few pictures to tell you how popular Jacob was. When Sri Narendra Modi assumed charge as India's Prime Minister, he paid great respect to this great man. General Jacob also got due respect from Begum Hasina, Sheikh Mujibur's daughter, and he was the first officer to be welcomed by Bangladesh when he went on a special mission there. Not only here in India or in Bangladesh, he was honored by Israel with a plaque on the Wall of Honor at the Ammunition Hill in Jerusalem. He is here with Mr. Shimon Peres, the former president and also Prime Minister of Israel. Jacob had great standing with Queen Elizabeth and all the other dignitaries in Great Britain. He always supported strong India-Israel relations, purchase and trade of military equipment, and from Israel. Not only that, Jacob also was a prominent speaker at the United States of America, and some of his speeches were applauded by the Americans. Jacob had a good personal collection which he gifted to the service. Artifacts, old guns, statues. He uplifted the facade of Fort William and the command library. There's a Jacob gallery in the officers' mess at Devlali, and he also presented guns to the USI. General Roberts, the famous master gunner during the British times, his statue was in Calcutta, which he successfully got it transported with due political support from the West Bengal government into Devlali. He was a student of ancient history, artifacts, music, archaeological studies, and many things. He took interest in geopolitics, information technology, and cooking. One thing which I must mention about Jacob is that he interacted with the juniors. I have experienced it. When I was adjutant of the regiment, one day his ADC, who's my course mate, called me up, and while we were chatting, Jacob just took the phone and had a nice little chat with me. And that chat continued. Even after Jacob had retired and he was staying in Som Vihar, I was posted in Army headquarters, but Jacob would drop into my office and have a cup of tea with me. And when my boss would come, a lieutenant general, he would tell him, just move away. Let me spend some time with this young man and see whether he's actually doing some work or whiling away his time. Jacob invited me to his house at least on 2, 3 occasions to spend an evening with him. It was a great honor. I would go to his house and he was writing whatever he wrote in his manuscripts. He would ask me to read them. So when I told him, I said, "Sir, I'm far too junior. What you're writing about the 1971 war, I was at the lowest rung of the ladder of the Indian Army, while as you were at the top level." You know the answer which he gave me? He said, "Young man, today you're a brigadier, you have enough service. I want you to read this paper and tell me whether I am on the right lines." That was his humility. Great man. He even went down to his guard room and played carom with the guard and chatted with the men, saw whether their food was good and how it was. I think that was one of the finest qualities of a great general and a leader. Jacob got his due from dignitaries in India and Bangladesh. Here he is when he went on this special visit on the invitation of the government of Bangladesh in March 2010. It is Jacob's initiative that the government of Bangladesh today every year invites the Indian Armed Forces veterans of the 1971 war to Bangladesh and looks after us. I had the great honor of being part of the first delegation to have gone to Bangladesh in December 2010. And this practice still continues thanks to General Jacob. This is the equestrian statue of General Roberts, Bobs of Kandahar, because that is where he fought a major battle in the 1870s. He was the CNC. He is astride his horse, Bonolel. This statue was lying in Calcutta, but General Jacob got it restored to its correct place. That is the alma mater of the Regiment of Artillery. And therefore, it's of great value that General Jacob stood here to see what he had shipped from Calcutta to Devlani. And finally, as I told you, I have had a number of lovely evenings with General Jacob, the grand old bachelor. When he entertained me, I saw his beautiful home, which was like a museum. General Jacob stood there and this picture was taken. I think this is the hallmark of this great General Jacob, an Israeli to start with from Baghdad. He was a Baghdadi Jew who came to Calcutta. He ingrained himself as an Indian, and as very correctly not only Mr. Shekhar Dutt has mentioned, but the Honorable General from Israel has mentioned that he decided to continue to stay in India and be part of not only the Indian Army, but India itself. General Jacob's two brothers, the older brother and the younger brother, Jacob was the middleman. Both of them fought in the Second World War in the British Army and in the Royal Air Force. But both those brothers finally settled in England. Jacob was the only person who said, "India is my home and Israel is my friend." On that note, ladies and gentlemen, I will say thank you to you for listening to me patiently for this little discourse which I gave on General Jacob, my hero, my father's very dear friend, and I shall hand it back to Ashish in case there are any questions or if there is anything. I would like to take it on at your convenience, whatever is the plan, I don't know. Now, how do I stop sharing the screen? Kindly guide me.
Yes, you have stopped presenting at the right-hand corner on the top.
Okay, yep, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so now,
Excellent, excellent.
Excellent.
Thank you so much, Brigadier Apte. It was an excellent presentation, giving extensive information on General Jacob. I think you were very privileged to know him, as was Saminder Moore, who was his ADC, I was told, and Shekhar Dutt and others who actually got the chance to interact with such a great man. Thank you so much, Brigadier Apte. I would now like to invite Dr. Ithamar Theodor, who is with the Zefat Academic College in Israel. He is a scholar on Hindu scriptures, particularly the Bhagavad Gita. He has not only translated them, but also written commentaries on those texts. And he is now entrusted with the task of the implementation of establishing a chair at the University of Haifa in the memory of General Jacob. So I would request Dr. Ithamar Theodor to kindly present the entire project of the chair on Jacob's name to all of us. Dr. Theodor, please. Thank you.
Good evening, dear friends. First of all, I'd like to compliment Brigadier Apte for a wonderful and moving talk. Thank you so much. It was an excellent and moving talk. I'm humbled to hear about General Jacob. Now, I will briefly present. The. Let's see if I do it. I'm trying to share my screen. Let's see. It worked before.
Yes.
Do you see the presentation?
No, we see your screen. You please.
And we can see the presentation.
No.
Can you see the presentation?
No.
Yes,
That's right.
yes.
You can see it now. Yes.
So you can see, it says Haifa University, General Jacob, Indo Isreali Forum, update November 2021. So I hope you see that. I will go through it briefly. This is the famous battle taking place in 1918, where the Indian battalion liberated Haifa, and subsequently Haifa Day is celebrated in both the Indian Army and the city of Haifa. This is the Hindu Jewish Studies established at the University of Haifa in 2011, operate for 7 years by a generous donation of Mr. Gershon from Hong Kong. This is the framework for academic collaboration signed with the University of Haifa at 2018. You can see here President, Director, Head of HMS, and of course, Governor Shekhar that is also here. This is an event which took place in Mysore, Karnataka in 2019. Some of us were there. The Indo Isreali friendship group. This was less than a year ago. The Indo Isreal study group was established. You see the emblem up here, and we had our inaugural speech that was last December. These are 3 events which took place just about a month ago, a little more, celebrating the Haifa Victory Day. So this is the first event, and this is the second event, all wonderful events which took place just a month and a half ago in India. About General Jacob, I have nothing to say about all we heard. Basically, the forum is meant to serve as a major academic hub for the growing Indo-Israeli relations. That's the purpose of this academic forum. The scope is, on the one hand, academic. We want to further research and teaching, to organize scholarly conferences promoting scientific publications. But then we also we want to have public impact and serve the cause of Indo-Israeli relations in various ways, and also work closely with the Indian Embassy and with the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We want to have 2 disciplines, both social sciences and humanities, in various issues: social sciences, business, environment, security, agriculture, various pragmatic topics. And then I didn't have it here, but as far as humanities, we want to have Gandhian studies, Hindu-Jewish studies, Hindu studies, and other topics in the realm of humanities. Postgraduate research, MA scholarships, doctoral scholarships, postdoctoral scholarships, to have Indian scholars coming to spend time as postdoctoral fellows here in Haifa University, study various areas. We want to conduct a few annual conferences, an Indo Isreali, major Indo Isreali relations conference, bringing together everyone, academics, diplomats, business, the public, everyone together. A Hindu Jewish, Asian Jewish conference, comparative religion Gandhian conference, an Israeli Gandhian conference for the betterment of Israeli society. We want to conduct ongoing seminars and visit dignitaries from India. When ministers or dignitaries come, we would like to host them for lectures, hear their views, bring together scholars to discuss various issues at stake. These are conferences which we already did in Haifa. That's a conference in 2018 about Jewish communities in modern Asia. This is the Asian Jewish Conference, you see, with the Indian embassy as partners, which we did about 2 years ago. This kind of conference we want to promote. Here are topics of study in the realm of social and political science, security, democracy, food, maritime strategy, energy, cyber threats, environmental policy, everything we can promote. Collaborating with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Indian Embassy. As I mentioned, Indian Embassy, we're in good terms. Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we want to serve their causes and promote Indo-Israeli relations. This is an example of a meeting at the Knesset on the topic of India and the Jewish people, which took place a few years ago. You can see the Indian High Commissioner sitting here in the discussion. Humanities, as I mentioned, Hindu studies, religions of India, Hindu-Jewish comparative studies, Gandhian studies, history and heritage of the Indo-Jewish community, Gandhian and Jewish ethics, all these in the realm of humanities. These are some of our publications. That's Hindu-Jewish studies, Dharma and Halacha. This is Bhagavad Gita critical introduction. This is an Indian edition done by Routledge in New Delhi. And this is also a book done by Routledge in India and in a special Indian edition. So we have presence there and we want to have more of a presence in the Indian book market. This is our steering committee, Governor Shekhar Dad, General Yossi Ben Hanan, Professor Shal Khorev, Dr. Ashish Kulkarni, Mr. Ravi Kumar, Mr. Narendran, S. Narendran, Professor Rotem Kovner, and myself. And this is the inauguration is meant to be on October 2nd. That's Gandhi's birthday in 2022. That's the budget, $1.8 million US, which we hope to raise. And we require this is the budget over 5 years. We're seeking 10 partners, both Indian and Israeli companies or philanthropies who will contribute $180,000 US each over 5 years, i.e. $36,000 US per year. And we seek a balanced mixture of partners presenting the security sector, land, agriculture, IT, and more. And we also seek philanthropies to promote social, environmental issues in the sphere of Gandhian studies. That's basically the overview. And thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ithamar Theodor. I think this chair, establishment of this chair would be a fitting tribute to General Jacob, and I think it will go a long way in furthering the relations between the two countries and the people of those two countries. Thank you very much indeed. I think if we have any questions for any of the speakers today, I think we can take 1 or 2 questions. Yes, Ran, would you like to ask something? Yes, Ran.
Well, I just want to say one remark about the story of General Jacob as a research fellow who researched this field. There is one comprehension to do for the General Jacob. if you know General John Monash from Australia. General John Monash, he was an Australian Jew in World War I. And for many times, there is always a comprehension between him and Jacob. I mean, the Australian look for Jacob and call him the Indian Monash, and the Indian actually look about the Monash and call him the Australian Jacob. I mean, it's an interesting story about two Jewish generals who were actually almost the same. They were very brilliant and outstanding in their qualification and had a lot of winning.
No.
Very good. Thank you, Ron. Incidentally, I am also from Australia.
Would anybody like to ask any questions to Brigadier Apte or General Hacohen or Shekhar Dutt or Ithamar Theodor? They are all here.
We have few more military generals if they want to say something. Not necessary to ask question, but share some.
No, I take this opportunity to congratulate Brigadier Apte because it was a very well presented, and one of the thing which Ithamar was saying, in the academic field, how in a short time you can say many things, and even lecturing with the help of the very small things what Brigadier Apte did is a lesson for young scholars. So I must congratulate Brigadier Apte.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think it is time for me to formally thank all those who have contributed to this program. First and foremost, Brigadier Ajit Apte for making this excellent presentation on the life and legacy of General Jacob. Thank you very much. I think a lot of people were introduced and
just a minute more, Ashish.
Yes.
I must also mention my friend General Irshani, who I had requested if he can speak, but then he suggested that he has to go somewhere, and he would ask General Hacohen to be present, and we are very, very fortunate that General Hacohen came, and it was the words of the general were equally very, very impressive. Thank you.
Yes, of course.
I can say, with your permission, that
Yes, of course.
Brigadier Apte presentation is actually the explanation and exemplification of what I really said about General Jacob. So if I would have to explain what I really intended to say, I will send them to Brigadier Apte.
Thank you, General Hacohen.
Thank you, General. Thank you.
My thanks also go to Shri Shekhar Dutt for making his opening remarks and laying the background to start our program. Of course, General Hacohen, who tried to explain General Jacob's personality based on his understanding of ancient Jewish values, which we are all now getting familiar with, particularly his aspect of not having to choose between India and Israel in the conventional sense. He could be loyal to India and he could be friends with Israel, and there was never any conflict of interest in his mind about this. There was never any confusion in his mind about this, and I think that is an important aspect of General Jacob which was brought before us today. Thank you so much for that, General Hacohen, and of course, Ithamar Theodor for presenting to us the plan to establish the chair in the name of General JFR Jacob, which I think encompasses a wide range of subjects. And what is very encouraging is that this would give an opportunity not only for corporates to sponsor and philanthropists to contribute money for a cause, but also give an excellent opportunity over the coming years for both students, scholars, and academics to interact with their counterparts in both countries. And I think that will be the foundation of a long-lasting relationship between the people of those two countries. So thank you very much, Ithamar, again. And of course, thank you to all of you who have taken time off and joined our webinar today. It is rather late in India, and I'm very happy to note that people have joined even after 9:30 in the evening, and it's close to 11 o'clock now. And people are still around in this meeting. So thank you so much once again. I think I can declare that the meeting is formally closed. Ravi Kumarji, if you would like to say something.
Now we
please.
like to interact with each other.
Sure.
Few, people here.
Yes. Although,
if you can start with some of the Israelis, you know them.
yes. Ran Amitai, who was here earlier on, he is researching
He's
on
still there.